How's it going, guys? Preston here. I'm just going to talk about some demonology. Back into it. Alright, let's see. So, as many of you may have heard or seen on other videos and stuff, demonology rework. First iteration, alpha build. Here we are. So, we already knew, obviously, demonology was going to get heavily reworked. Just from stuff we had heard from the Q&A, stuff like that. But what are all these new abilities? What do they do? How does it work? Is it better than what we have now? Those are kind of the questions I want to ask. So, like, and what can we do? Because it's still very early. We have a chance to give feedback to Blizzard and say this is cool, but you know, maybe change this one or two thing. I think that's kind of what I want to hopefully get across, and see if you guys agree with me or disagree with me. It'd be interesting. All right. So anyway, let's just get into the changes. So. First of all, it's actually not as heavily changed as you might think, but they are important changes. They're pretty much all the changes. I know myself included, and I think a lot of people wanted this to be kind of what demonology was. But first, I want to talk about a few things. So first of all, life tap is just straight up gone from our spell book, and that's not good because life tap was very good for on-the-move resource management, which meant that most of the time movement didn't really hurt your DPS. It just sort of delayed it in a way. But that's gone, so keep that in mind as I talk about these abilities. So when we go to spec here, we've got our Shadow Bolt, we've got Hand of Gul'dan, we've called Dreadstalkers, we still have Drain Life. Yeah, it's great for when you're like about to die and the healer's not healing you. So okay, so we still have those, and so those are our base things. Those are still the same. So the demonic empowerment mechanic's gone, just so you know, and we have Soulfire back. Not only we have Soulfire back, so the teal tip's broken on here, but I've seen gameplay footage, and it's been confirmed as to what it actually does. And what it actually does is we'll get into it in a second. Soulfire's back, Molten Core's back. Yeah. Soul Link is still here. Shadow Fury's baseline for everybody. Imp Swarm. There used to be a glyph for that. Mastery is probably still placeholder. And Demonic Commander. So these are our baseline abilities. And I'm just going to flip over to Photoshop here real quick. And I've broken down these baseline abilities. So we have our two builders. Then we have spenders, our passive effect, and our cooldown. So before I get into talents, I'm just going to talk about this. So builders, we have our basic Shadow Bolt. You just hard cast it, you get a shard. Now, Soulfire, the tooltip's bugged here, so it basically has the Hand of Gul'dan talent text for some reason. It's not what it does. What Soulfire does is when you cast it, it generates you 2 soul shards. So you get double what you would out of a Shadow Bolt cast. And from what I hear, it does good damage, but we really don't know about damage yet. So, our spenders are still going to be Called Dreadstalkers and Hand of Gul'dan. Called Dreadstalkers has been tweaked a bit. Less cooldown, less duration, so I guess you're just going to be hitting it more often. So I guess it's a bit more focused. Some of you are going to probably have to hit more often. So yeah, so you still have 2 soul shards, Called Dreadstalkers, Hand of Gul'dan for 4 soul shards, 1 to 4. Now, our passive effect, Molten Core. So, in the past, Molten Core was procced off of Wild Imp Firebolt casts. This is no longer the case. What the new Molten Core is when your Imp dies or runs out of energy, as what it's called, and I'll get to that in a minute. But what that means is whenever the Imp runs out, they have a 15% chance to, it says, explode and give you Molten. Basically, the Imps run out, they have a chance to give you Molten Core. You can have up to 4 Molten Core stacks. If you don't know what Molten Core is, it reduces the cast time of your next Soulfire by 75%. So basically, it has really long... It's basically Pyroblast, right? It has a long cast time. You don't cast it without the proc. So basically, you can store up to 4 of these, which will give you a ton of soul shards. So basically, this is going to be, as the fight goes, you summon your first few imps, and then those imps are going to let you summon more imps and other things as well. But yeah, so that's one thing. Also, side note, the imps spawn near you. thank God. Oh yeah, so I didn't mention Demon Wrath's been removed, so that's gone. So your only methods of AoE without talents are currently Hand Gul'dan and your pet. So yeah, maybe they'll add something else soon. But like I said, this was the first build. So currently there's like no AoE. I don't necessarily have a problem with that because we're not going to be tied down to a particular spec like we were. So if something calls for a ton of AoE, we could go Destruction or Affliction to take care of that. But if we need that sustained single target damage, we might go Demonology. So keep that in mind when we're talking about these specs. Alright, so Imp Swarm, 45-second cooldown, immediately summons 5 imps, and it's no shards, so you can do 5 imps plus Hand Gul'dan for another 4 to give you 9 imps right off the bat. Once those run out, you'll be getting Soulfire procs for more and more Hand Gul'dans and that sort of thing. Now, those are our baseline abilities. Now we have a baseline cooldown, which is Demonic Commander. Now I'll talk about. It's very, very cool ability, and I absolutely love it in concept. I have like one suggestion in a little bit. So you'll read here, 2-second cast, 1.5 minute cooldown. So lines up with things pretty well. And it says increases the duration. Now this is where it's a little bit confusing. It says increases the duration of all your current demons by 15 seconds. From what I can tell, minions no longer have duration, aside from like called Dreadstalkers and stuff, but imps have energy. So imps will last between pulls of trash, but because they won't expend all their energy yet. So say they have 100 energy, a firebolt costs like 10, right? So they get like 10 firebolts before they die. So if you summon, you have a bunch of imps out after a trash pull, they should be up for the next trash pull, so they're not wasted. So we'll just keep that in mind. And yeah. But yeah, this Demon Commander, so it's going to increase the duration of all your demons, and it's going to buff all your demons, and it's going to Shadowbolt Volley. So it's going to do a ton of AoE damage, increase all your active demons damage. It's basically a big mega buff to all your pets, and it does a lot of damage on its own. So it's really cool, right? And it looks really awesome too. I've seen some videos with it. Now, those are the baseline abilities. Let's get into the talents. So first of all, we can pick up Doom, and it looks to work pretty much the same as our current Doom, which confused everyone. Yeah, I have videos explaining how to use Doom. But yeah, anyway, it works pretty much the same as our normal Doom that we have now, which, if you don't know, works like any other dot in the game. It just has one tick, so you can haste snapshot it and all that. It looks to be the same, but you cannot multi-dot with this spell. So that's a little bit interesting. We have Demonic Calling. Demonic Calling seems to be identical to Live. We have Demonic Strength. So Demonic Strength will increase your Felguard's damage by 50% and reduce the Fellstorm ability's cooldown by X amount. It looks to be bugged at the moment. Now, the thing about this is, like I said, we don't have Demon Wrath, at least not in this build. So this ability will increase your Felguard. Now, your Felguard has passive cleave on him. He has Fellstorm, which is going to be a really good AoE. So that's going to be really good in AoE situations. Demonic Calling is going to be sort of that RNG playstyle if you really like that. Probably going to sim really high, especially when you're able to get more minions out to combo with your commander. Doom, we're not really, like, it really just depends on how much damage it does. It doesn't generate you a soul shard. I think it's mostly placeholder what we have right here. I hope they do something really cool with Doom, but currently, meh, is what I would say about it. And having only one target will make it a lot more easy to manage, as multi-targeting Dooms was pretty difficult to micromanage, and you required a lot of weak orders and add-ons to keep track of correctly. Now, we have, on the next tier, we have Summon Vile Fiend. Now, this sounds really neat. It's got a 45-second cooldown, which means it will combo with your imp swarm, and every other one will combo with your demonic commander. So that's really good. And it summons a Vile Fiend, which will do whatever damage it feels like doing. From what I've seen, this is not fully yet implemented in the alpha build, but we're looking at it now. Now, Power Siphon. This one is pretty neat. You can activate this to instantly sacrifice up to 4 of your imps to generate 4 charges of Molten Core. This pretty much just guarantees you're going to get Molten Core procs. And now this is a very nice burst build that I'm going to talk about in a bit. Riders, I should say. Henna Gul'dan has a 25% chance per soul shard spent to summon an additional wild imp. Now, I'm pretty sure that means we get, instead of 4, we have 5. So if you use it, like, you could be spending, like, this talent bothers me a little bit because we could run into the situation where you're spending Henna Gul'dan at like 1 shard just for that extra imp, depending on how much Henna Gul'dan's damage outcomes. So it's a little murky, but it's cool that you get an extra imp, I guess. But I don't know. I personally, I find it a little boring compared to the other two, but some people like the passive effects. So for leveling, I guess you could go with that. Actually, I'd probably go with this one for leveling, just so that I could kill things faster, but meh. 45 tier, this is the same as our current, I think, 75 tier. It's just up at 45 now, so I guess when you're leveling, you can get that Burning Rush, yo. But yeah, mostly the same. Yeah, that's pretty much the same. I think they might have nerfed Dark Pact, it looks like, but otherwise the same. Overload. So this is one I would say I would combine with this one. So Overloaded, Molten Core makes Soulfire instant cast. This is something I would probably run all the time unless like it was really like the other talents just outweighed it so much, because the current build of Demonology doesn't have a ton of movement, and giving you yourself, like, even if I wasn't combining it with this, I would still use it because there's not really instant cast spells, and instant cast Soulfire is really good. Because, you know, you can do things on the move. You can spend like 1 or 2 globals and throw off Soulfires on your way and generate some shards. Now, Demonic Strength infuses your fellow guard with demonic power, increases all the damage it deals by 100%, and causing it to generate a bonus attack every 5 seconds for 20 seconds. This is a pretty big cooldown for your main pet. We'll have to see how much damage this really does to really make a call as to if it's worth. And then, yeah, now this ability... So we really just don't know. So Bile Scourge Bombers is a 1.5 second cast, 1.5 minute cooldown. Now from Alpha, I've seen that you can cast this while moving, which is nice. So this is going to be, I guess, sort of the replacement to Demon Wrath in a way, but it's on a 1.5 minute cooldown. And basically, a bunch of fell bats just suicide into the area, and it looks cool. It's cool. It's neat, but as a talent, unless it's an AoE fight, like in dungeons, yeah, but unless it's an AoE fight, you're gonna be picking between these, I would assume. 75 tier, so yeah, Demonic Circle, next to Mortal Coil, next to Dark Fury. So Dark Fury, since we have Shadow Fury already, Dark Fury just reduces the cooldown of it, so yeah. Pretty standard stuff here. Okay, so Grimoire Service is still a thing, and it looks to still be a 1.5 minute cooldown. So we have a lot of 1.5 minute cooldowns, which is pretty sick because it means that we have a lot of things we can pop all at once. We can pop, you know, Grimoire with Vile Fiend, with our Imp Swarm, with our freaking Commander, and those things will all line up. You know, we should be able to line them all up again. We could do bombers, but I don't think they count as minions because it's more like an AoE ability. But anyway, you know, like all those things will line up with Commander for the first time, and I think like this, whatever the next time, you know, I'm pretty sure it should. It's nice to see everything with a consistent cooldown. So nice to still have that. I liked having 2 Fel Guards. It's great. So that now Synergy is still here. Synergy, it's a bit of a nice passive. Previously, Synergy has been really good for like pure AoE situations where you're gonna be casting a lot. Now, with the return of Soulfire and that actually more of the damage coming from you, the player, rather than you, the minions, Synergy could, and especially since it counts your main pet, like Synergy could be really viable, but we don't know. But it's nice that it's still there because it's a nice playstyle. Now this one's very interesting. I think it's a little odd that it's here in the middle, but it says your demonic commander now destroys and absorbs the remaining power of all your wild imps to empower himself. So basically, the demon commander does Shadow Bolt volleys, right? He basically sits there and casts old school Starfall in a 40-yard range around him, aggroing everything in the zone. So I'll get back to my feedback when it comes to that. But so this talent will be very good on AoE, and I guess single target as well, depending on how much he does, right? That's kind of my main gripe with it, is that previously we had Infernal and Doomguard, which are both gone, by the way. Except for Destruction still has Infernal. And those two shared a cooldown, so you could use the Doomguard on single target while you could use the Infernal on AoE, and you had that sort of choice. Here, they wrapped everything into the Demon Commander, and it does AoE. And not just AoE, like, I pulled the whole room AoE. So, like, yeah, that's going to be interesting on those LFR things. LFR, random dungeons, when you see a Demon Lock, pop Demon Commander, pull the whole room and zone out, right? Yeah, cool. But yeah, I don't like that my biggest cooldown is an AoE. Like, I like them to maybe have like Demon Command, or maybe like the those what are those I-beam guys? The ones that summon those little eyeballs. Like, maybe that shoots Shadow Bolt volleys, but then you summon like a big dude who does single target, and they share a cooldown. But otherwise they're the same, but just one does Shadow Bolt volley, one does single target damage. That's what I personally would like to see. I'd like to know what you guys think about that idea, or maybe just, hey, Doomguard and Infernal back, but does all that crap on top of it. We'll see what you guys think. So anyway, that's that talent. Now, Soul Conduit's still here. I'm not a huge fan of Soul Conduit just because it's like, I feel like it either A, needs to just be straight up baseline, or B, just gone. Like, because they always put really cool stuff next to it, and it's just like, well, yeah, but you're just getting a shit ton more resource, like, I don't know. We'll see. So Inner Demons. So this is interesting. So if you didn't play pre-Legion Demonology, Demonology had the Molten Core mechanic from the Imps, and it had Imp Storm as a glyph. So the reason it was a glyph is we had basically this Inner Demons mechanic where every 10 seconds you would summon an imp, but now you can no longer hit Imp Storm. So it's basically reversed. So we have Imp Storm default, and then instead we're getting one every 10 seconds instead of summoning 5 at 40 every 45 seconds. Now the interesting part with me, so that's nice if you don't want to have to manage the button, maybe it's more damage overall in a sim or something. But what's interesting about this is that when this procs to summon an imp, it will summon an additional demon to fight for you for however long it feels like it, right? We don't know. So that's interesting. One, it could look really cool if it's summoning like random demon model, for example. Oh, there's a Doomguard. Oh, there's a Felguard. There's a Succubus, whatever, right? That could be really neat as far as visuals go. Kind of like, I think there was a trinket, or it was like the set bonus in Hellfire. I think it was Hellfire. Some WoD raid, one of the two. So that's interesting. That part's interesting. I'd probably stick with Imp Swarm myself just to combine it, but we'd try, it'd be kind of cool. Now, Nether Portal looks really, really awesome. I've yet to see anyone put any gameplay on this. Let me know if you guys find something. But anyway, it's 3-minute cooldown. Costs 5 soul shards, which is probably the part that sucks the most about this spell. But I'll get into that. So basically, tear open a portal in Twisting Nether for 20 seconds. Every time you spend soul shards, you will also command demons from the Nether to come fight out and fight for you. Basically, you're like, hey, I'm opening my own dark portal and just bringing in a fucking army to just annihilate whatever the hell I feel like, right? That is so cool to me. So that's awesome. Now, what does this mean gameplay-wise? What this means is you're going to be capped at soul shards, so you can't overcap on soul shards, so that sucks right away. So that's 5 soul shards. It says 50, but that's just because 10 shards is 1 fragment. It's just a little bug. So it costs 5 soul shards. Now, so you're immediately going to start this cooldown with no shards. Okay? That sucks. Now, every time you spend a soul shard, you will summon a minion. So I'm guessing per shard you spend, you summon 1. Now, if I was going to run this build, what I would do is I'd run this build, and I would run something like Power Siphon with making Soulfire instant cast. Right? I would run something like that. Maybe I'd run Demonic Calling just for that. And I would kind of build up procs. So the way you would play this is basically you would build to 5 soul shards with ideally with the Shadow Bolts, and you already have 4 Soulfire procs or 4 Molten Coal procs ready to go because you can hold up to 4. You'd summon it, spend 2 of your Molten Cores plus 1 Shadow Bolt to get back up to 5, or just 2 Handigal Dan. You know, spend your shards, and then you know, then hit a Power Siphon to sacrifice those imps, and you know your Soulfires are instant cast, so you can get more. You're basically squeezing out as many shard spends you can in that 20-second duration to really make this talent work. I think the 5 soul shard cast is a bit much. The cast time, I know some people have complained about the cast time, but I don't really think that's big a deal. A 3-minute cooldown plus 5 shards for how big of the, like, 3-minute cooldown, that's supposed to be one of your big rated cooldowns, right? That's something you combo with Lust and those sorts of things. So I understand, like, some people look at it from a PvP standpoint. From a PvP standpoint, you probably would never take this talent. But you could set up some really interesting combinations with this. Now, like I said, I was going to talk about, is this version of demonology, is it better than what we have now? So, after looking at that, so one thing I want to talk about briefly is the difference between imps from what we can see on the alpha right now and some of the gameplay that's out there, is that previously in Legion, we had, whenever you summoned any minion, but imps in particular, they had a set duration. This meant that you really needed haste, like hardcore. We probably still want haste as this new demonology, just because there are things that want you to stack as many minions out as you can on top of yourself, but we don't really know. So they last a set duration in Legion, but this one they're using energy. This has a few advantages because, like I said previously, if I'm in a dungeon and I hit Handigal Dan a few times, because it does a little bit of splash damage just to kill some little dudes, those imps aren't going to go to waste. They're going to follow me to the next trash pull or even boss pull, perhaps. Considering we still generate up to 3 shards out of combat, if there's a quick trash pull before a boss, you should just waste all your shards before and then get your, you know, and then you'll have imps ready to go, plus 3 shards to go. So that's really nice. I think that's a very positive change. Also, just with how they worked, they're going to be giving you Soulfire procs on when they run out. I think that's interesting because it means, hey, when these imps run out, here's like a chance to get more. So it's something that adds on to what you have. Now, before, it was just kind of like, get as many out as you can, and then, you know, try and get as many Ascendance procs as you can in the small window. based on them how many you have. So basically on the number you have in that second, that was how it was before. Now this, it's a bit more methodical, where you can kind of, you get the benefit of having a ton of demons, but you can spend it later, and I like that personally. It just so far it's looking good, right? Now now we have some cooldown differences. I know my handwriting's terrible, but so I call it DC. So Demon Commander extends all your things, buffs everything, and does a Starfall effect. That's kind of your big cooldown. Now, in Legion, we had the choice between our Doomguard or an Infernal for single target or AoE. We could do either one. And I prefer, I mean, I haven't played with it, but I like the idea of being able to make that choice a lot more than I have to use Starfall in my single target rotation. Could you imagine if you're a balanced druid and it's like, oh, I have to use Starfall in my single target rotation as my big cooldown? That seems a bit weird to me, and it probably will for a lot of players once the hype dies down a little bit. Now, I will say the new form of demonology, you're comboing it with Imp Swarm, all these other things that have long durations, so your cooldowns are going to be very good for mobs like bosses that last a long time or very high, but what we had previously was we comboed it with our artifact ability, which was just a single target, basically a more powerful chaos bolt, right? That if hit the right time, it would crit for like insane amounts of damage. We could use that previously to hit a priority target and instantly, like take Tumus Sargarius Avatar, for example. When you need to switch to Maiden, you can throw your artifact ability on there and it'll do a bunch of instant damage. With this new system, unless they implement something where we can tell all our minions to instantly target switch, we might be losing that. Now, I personally would say, hey, please let us tell our imps where to attack. Just have it follow our main pet. Can you please, Blizzard, please? I would absolutely love that. Now, I haven't seen that yet. All the gameplay I've seen imps attacking different targets. Like just seeing those imp firebolts crisscross makes me a little sad. However, we're not as dependent on them all attacking the same target, I suppose, because there's nothing like the Dreadbite mechanic from Dreadstalkers where, like, they do a ton of damage to the things your Dreadstalkers are attacking. But still, I want control over where my damage goes. Alright, so that's the difference there. Now, this is just a breakdown of just a few different scenarios. Is this better than what we have now? So we're going to hit on-demand damage and target switching ability. There's more focus in the Battle for Azeroth on your main pet, which you have complete control over. But a lot of your cooldowns are AoE based, which may not be that great. So, and then in live on Legion, we have bad target switching, but we have our artifact to nuke down a on-demand target. So that's something there. So I've broken down our multi-target and AoE. It seems the Battle for Azeroth will come with strong AoE cooldowns, but outside of that, we rely mostly on our pet for our base AoE. Now, and what I mean by that is Fellstorm, which has a cooldown, and it has some passive cleave, and we must rely also on Hannigal Dan, which means we're going to have to be weaving in Shadow Bolts, Soulfires, things like that, even in massive AoE scenarios, just to generate Soul Shards to use Hannigal Dan, because we don't have something like Demon Wrath to generate us Soul Shards in AoE. So, like I said, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it is something to keep in mind. Now, in Legion, we have very good stacked, sustained AoE with ramp potential. So, as long as the mobs aren't moving everywhere, we're going to be Handigal Danning. We're going to hit that. We're going to have a ton of imps there. They're all going to Demon Wrath, progress a bunch of Soul Shards, and it's just going to ramp up, ramp until we have a lot of AoE damage. We're not going to have that moving into Battle for Azeroth. Like I said, just something to keep in mind. Now, sustained damage, single target. The cooldowns seem to play really well together and are good for long fights in Battle for Azeroth. This is pretty much the same as what we've got in Legion. It's just, I think it's a lot more straightforward for a lot of players. That's something I haven't really mentioned too much, is a lot of players are going to find this a lot more easy to understand than our current system. But something that I think is a major good change is we're not having that Dread Bite mechanic. So if you don't know what I mean by that, in current Legion Live, when you summon Dreadstalkers, they will attack the target, and they'll put a debuff on the target, which is something like 20% extra damage taken by your Imp Firebolt. And Imp Firebolt is your #1 damaging ability. So, if you're having to target switch, you're losing about 30% of your top damaging ability by attacking the wrong target, by switching your target. And that's pretty bad, right? This doesn't really seem to be the case because demonic empowerment isn't a thing, because this Dread Bite mechanic isn't a thing. Even though your imps might be targeting the wrong thing, it's not going to be as bad to summon new imps on a different target, if that makes sense. But still not great. Still, Blizzard, please let us control our minions. Now, I'm going to talk about the big one right here. Movement. So with the removal of Life Tap, the removal of Demon Wrath, the removal of Doom as a baseline ability, and the removal of instant cast Shadowbolt procs, Demonology is going to be very rooted in the ground. Destruction at least has Conflagrate, right? And obviously Affliction's got all the dots for days. So it's going to be very, very rooted in the ground. Now, there are talents like the instant cast Soulfire procs that can help with this, but even then, you're going to have to rely on getting those procs to be able to continue to do DPS and move. Now, this kind of sucks, right? We're kind of used to, in Legion as Demonology, being able to have movement without losing hardly any DPS, unless we're shard capped, basically. Because we can life tap on the go, because we burn our mana so fast on live, you know, we don't have to cast very many spells to be able to get use out of life tap. We have instant cast Shadowbolt, we have Doom to refresh or cast on new targets, and we have Demon Wrath on top of all of that, which we can just cast on the move all the time with no cooldown. And so we have all of those things currently in live, and all of those are being removed. So, with that in mind, we're going to be losing a lot of movement potential with Demonology moving into Battle for Azeroth, which sucks. But we're gaining a lot of cool stuff too. So I guess it kind of balances out, right? And like I said previously, we're not going to have the artifact weapon system, so we're not going to be tied down to playing a particular spec in the same way. The legendary system isn't going to be there either. So you're not going to have to, you're going to be able to switch specs for different fights. So if there's too much movement for this fight, you can go Affliction or you can go Destruction. That's always been, in my opinion, the advantage of playing a pure DPS class. So I can sit there and be like, I'm a Warlock, I'm not just a Demonology. Like, I prefer Demonology, but I can switch up my gameplay to match the situation, and that's good. And I think, honestly, the game will be better for it. But I'd like to see something like Demon Wrath come back. I think would be good. But maybe it is Demon Wrath, right? But maybe have it only on your main pet, where you can actually control his positioning, and just have the damage scale with minions or something. I think could be a very interesting compromise. But yeah, so that's kind of my opinions on the new Demonology talents. Overall, very cool. I really love the idea that we're getting Soulfire back. I love the idea that we have so many different types of minions we're getting. A lot of the talents seem very interesting. I really want to be able to play around with it. My only concerns are with movement and with the Demon Commander being a core part of your main rotation, but also happens to cast Starfall and might pull a bunch of random mobs you don't want to pull, or something like that. And so I'd like to see it split into two separate minions, where we had like how we had with the Doomguard and Infernal. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be Doomguard and Infernal. I'm open to new ideas and new. I mean, we have a ton of demon models that were just laying there in Legion that they're not using anymore, right? And we have our own base there, right? Our order halls are still there. We still recruited a demon army. They're still ours, right? But yeah, anyway. I'm sure I've dragged this video on long enough. Let me know what you guys think. Does these demonology changes look awesome to you? Do you have some of the same concerns that I do? But also some hype. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Later.